Hello, Bio 20. This is a lesson that I would normally do in class, explaining as lab biochemical evidence for evolution, in which case we're using a database, an online database, and another website to do some comparisons for us. So all kinds of different evidence, of course, for evolution, supporting evolutionary theory. There's the fossil evidence, embryology, biogeography. This one here, we're taking a look at, well, the biochemical evidence. Very, very strong evidence in support of the fact that populations do change over time, and also the relationship that does exist between various different populations and different species. I'm not going to read through all the background information here. I'll just kind of give you the highlights. So when we are talking about biochemical information, we can go into the nucleus of the cell and actually take a look at the genetic information, the DNA. So DNA, long strands, polynucleotides that make up the chromosomes inside the nucleus of the cell, and they're made up of the what are called nitrogen bases or nucleotides, and you've probably seen this before. There's the C, the G, and the A, and the T. So we could compare directly the genetic code of various different species and different populations. When we're talking about humans, it's 46 different chromosomes. And in terms of these number of letters that we do have here, what we refer to as the steps in the ladder, for one set of your chromosomes, it's a fairly big number. It's 3.2 billion. So what this DNA is used for the most part, is in the making of proteins, and proteins, they're pretty much what do everything inside of your cells and inside of your body. So if you think about transporting oxygen, which is a protein that we're going to be taking a look at, that is a function that's carried out by what's called beta hemoglobin, but many other proteins for the contraction of muscles, for allowing different things to move into and out of cells, for sending and receiving nerve impulses, for digesting food, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. So what we do talk about is that DNA, it really doesn't do anything except provide the instructions, and those instructions that we're kind of concerned with here is for the making of proteins. Proteins are not made up of these different nitrogen bases. Instead, they are made up of what are called amino acids. And there are 20 different amino acids that we find in every single living organism that has been found on the planet. Every single living organism uses DNA for the genetic code, which is made up of the C's, the G's, the A's, and the T's. And all living organisms also use amino acids for their proteins. And it's 20 of them that are used for living organisms. So we could compare, yes, the C's and G's and A's and T's, but we're going to instead take a look at the amino acid sequence for a particular protein. And again, in our case, that protein is going to be what is referred to as hemoglobin, or the beta hemoglobin protein, which is found inside of red blood cells, and it is responsible for grabbing onto and transporting oxygen throughout your body. So this hemoglobin, and it's just abbreviated HB for the protein, it is made up of 146 amino acids. I'll just put AA in most species. So this is the thinking. If we do have two species that are fairly closely related to each other, they had a fairly recent common ancestor, then out of these 146 amino acids, they would be very, very, very similar. There might only be one or two differences. If we do have two species that diverge much further back in time, there would be many, many more differences. So why is this the case? Well, if we're talking about the beta hemoglobin, at one time, it would have originally evolved, and there would have been a specific sequence in the DNA, the C's, the G's, the A's, and the T's, which would code for this particular protein. But what happens if we do start with this species number 1, and then if those populations become separated and we have two other populations, then changes start to take place to the genetic code over time. And this is referred to as mutations. So as more time has gone on, there are more chances that maybe this G could have been changed to a C or one of the other 3 different bases. So the longer this period of time, what we would expect is the more changes there would be in the genetic code. And those letters in the genetic code, of course, they code for proteins. So that would also lead to changes in the protein in terms of the amino acid sequence. So that is what we're doing in this lab, is we're going to compare the amino acid sequence of 8 different species. And from that, well, let's take a look at the purpose down here. To predict the evolutionary relationship that exists between species based on biochemical evidence. To appreciate the relationship that exists between the amino acid sequence of different species and their amino acid relationship, their evolutionary relationship, and to become aware of the significance of biochemical evidence in support of evolutionary theory. So what I'm going to do is walk you through not all of these pages step by step, because it is a fairly long document, and that's why I'm just going to give you the brief version, which should be enough to get you going and do the lab. So for this lab, it is not a formal lab, right? In the end, this is what I will be looking for. You need to give me the amino acid sequences, the 146 letters for 8 different species. So I will be looking for that, and I'll show you how to get those. I will be looking for 3 tables. This is the first table, and this one actually isn't using biochemical evidence at all. This is taking a look at morphological features. These are physical things that we're taking a look at. So this is the way that it has traditionally been done, going all the way back to Carl Linnaeus and probably even before, in terms of how do we group different species into different categories. So again, this one here is not biochemical evidence for evolution. We'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit here though. So you will need to give me that table. That's one table. You will need to give me 2 other tables further down here. This one here. You will need to give me this table, and you will need to answer 6 questions. Here are 3 of the 6 questions, D, E, F, and here are the first 3, A, B, C. Okay, so again, you're giving me 3 things really: amino acid sequences, 3 tables, and 6 questions. That is the lab. Don't worry about problem, variables, hypothesis, material, anything like that. I'm not looking for any of that information. Okay, so back to this first table here, again, which is not DNA or biochemical evidence. What I'm really hoping is that most of the answers you already know. So here you're taking a look at 6 different species. So sperm whale, harbor seal, Atlantic salmon, bluefin tuna, human, and pig. And I'm asking you to take a look at these 6 different features. So presence of hair. So this is hair on the body surface at any time. So it could be as an adult, it could be as an infant, it could even be as a fetus. Is there any hair on the sperm whale, the harbor seal, Atlantic salmon, bluefin tuna, human, and pig? And you can just say yes, no, or put a check mark or an X. Mammary glands, these are in females. They're the ones that produce the milk to feed the young. So if there are mammary glands, if the infants do rely upon that milk coming from the mother, then they would have the mammary glands, and that would be yes. Are they warm-blooded or are they cold-blooded? For some of them, you might be able to give me both. So do they live in water or do they live on land predominantly? But in some cases, you may actually need to tell me both. Lungs for breathing, taking in oxygen, getting rid of carbon dioxide. The one thing that you probably do need to look for is the very last one here, and that is the taxonomy class. So of course, what we have is the very, very broad domains, and then we go to kingdom, phylum. What I'm looking for is the class. So sperm whale, what scientific class does it actually belong to? Harbor seal, what scientific class does it belong to? So what I recommend you do is start a Word document or some other document and just do all of your work directly in a Word document. So what you can do with this first one, for example, is, I have some stuff written on here, but if I just copy this, go to a Word document that I've already opened up for biochemical evidence for evolution, and you can just paste that table right in, and you can just fill it in right within that table. Okay, so that is for the first table. That's all you need to do for the first table, although there is one question as well that does go along with it. So let's take a look at really the meat of this lab, and that's the biochemical evidence. So 2 pretty cool websites, this one right here, the Uniprot website, it's going to give you the 146 amino acid sequence for all of the different species that you're looking for. And again, we're only looking at one protein. There are tens or maybe even in excess of 100,000 proteins that are used for our body to function properly, but we're only taking a look at one. So this is going to be somewhat limited because we're only looking at this one protein. However, what we find is that even looking at this one, it actually gives us a pretty accurate indication of the evolutionary relationship between different species. This table down below here, it just gives you the full name for the 20 different amino acids, the 3-letter code. But the websites that we're going to, they give us the 1-letter symbols. So all these letters that you'll see, the G's and the A's and the V's, those are just the 1-letter symbols for each of the 20 different amino acids. So the gene abbreviation for beta hemoglobin is HBB, as it shows here. And each of these abbreviations, HBB FICA, that one is for the sperm whale. HBB PHOVI, that one is for the harbor seal, I believe. HBB SAL looks like it's for the salmon, and so on. So I actually give you the abbreviations for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this one here. And then I'm going to click on this first website. So this is a huge database accessible to anyone in the entire world. And what it allows us to do is check, well, we can check the sequence for the DNA, but we're interested in the sequence, the amino acid sequence for proteins and for the beta hemoglobin protein. That's what we're looking for. So we'll go to that website, and this is where we're going to get all of our different amino acid sequences. So if we just kind of scroll down here, it has listed here a whole bunch of different protein names, the gene names, the organism, the length of it. But we want to simplify this. So this window at the top, what I just copied, I'm just going to paste it right into this window. Okay, so that's the HBB FICA. Now I'm just going to search. So scroll down, that actually only gives us one. Always double check. So make sure that the gene is the HBB one. Make sure it does say hemoglobin, the beta unit. Make sure it's the species that you're looking for. It is the sperm whale, and the length is, for most of them, it's 146. I think for one, it's 147. And again, this is the abbreviation here. So what we want is the sequence of these 146 amino acids. So I'm going to click on this number. And if I scroll down here, eventually what I come to is the sequence, a whole bunch of letters, and that's what you see at the bottom here. But what is probably a little bit easier is on the left-hand side, it kind of has the headings. So if you just take a look on the left-hand side and click on sequence, it takes us straight there. So here, it gives us 146 letters, and it also has these numbers. This is the 10th and the 20th. We actually don't want those numbers. We only want the letters. So you're going to click on this FASTA format, and it's going to get rid of the numbers. This top row, you don't want that, but what you are going to do, and you need to do this for each of your 8 different species, you're going to copy those rows. If it looks considerably longer or considerably shorter than this, you did something wrong. You chose the wrong protein or the wrong species or something, okay? But they should all be about the same length. So I'm going to copy that, and now I'm going to go into my Word document, where you also need to give me all of the sequences. So what I've done is I've actually already pasted it for the sperm whale, and you're just going to have to go through and do exactly the same thing for all of the others for both of the tables. So that's the harbor seal, the Atlantic salmon, the other ones in the first table, and then the second table there's also a gorilla and a chimpanzee and a rat. So you'll need all of those. So I'm going to do another one here, common squirrel, just so I can show you and how to do this without actually giving you any answers. So I'm going to go back to this Uniprot, and the window at the top, I'm just going to put in what I'm looking for. So here I'm not going to put in the abbreviation. I'm just going to put in beta hemoglobin, and you can do this as well. It also works this way. Beta hemoglobin, and I'm just going to put in for the squirrel. Okay, do my search. So it does end up being the first one here. Again, always double check. So we can see that the gene name is the HBV. It says that it is the beta hemoglobin, beta unit. It is the common squirrel, and 147. So this one is one longer. So again, what am I going to do? This is the format. This is what you do for all of your different species. Click on the number, scroll down to sequence, select FASTA, copy the second, third, and fourth row, go to your Word document, and paste it into your Word document. Okay, so I do want to see all of these. Oh, it looks like I already still have it here. So there is the squirrel that we do have, the common squirrel. So you need this again for 8 different species. Now you want to compare them letter by letter. But you don't want to go through and do this manually because that's going to take a huge amount of time. We want an easier way to do this. It's going to do the comparison for us. So for example, the first letter in the sperm whale is a V. In the squirrel, it's an M. H in the sperm whale, V in the common squirrel. But this would take a long time to calculate how many differences and then calculate the percentage. So this is what we're going to do instead. You just go to this other website. Go back here. Actually, I'll go to my original document that I have. Okay, so this was the website we were just at, the Unicrot. Now if we scroll down here, again, all of the instructions are here exactly as I showed you, but hopefully now you don't need to read through it all. Now I'm going to click on this one. And it's going to do all the comparison work for us. So what you have here are 2 windows, and you just put in those 2 windows, the 2 sequences that you want to compare. So I still have saved the squirrel. This is the squirrel. Now I'm just going to go back and get the sperm whale. Okay, make sure you don't miss any. Copy it exactly. All right, so these are the 2 I want to compare. Now all I need to do is click on this, Align Sequences, and it's going to automatically do all that work for us. So we get a bunch of information, but you only need one number, and it's a percentage. So if I scroll down here, I'm just looking for the first number, this one right here, 84.2% identity. That means identical. This 95.9, it means that some amino acids are similar, and there are more that are similar, but we're looking for ones that are identical. So this is the only thing you need is this percentage, 84.2% identical amino acids between those 2. So now going back to our original assignment that we do have, what are you going to do? Well, these are the species that you need to compare. So in one window, you would put sperm whale, and the other one harbor seal, and then you just tell me the percentage. You're going to put in sperm whale in one window, Atlantic salmon in the other, tell me that percentage. Okay, all of the different possible comparisons, you're going to do all of those. Everything at the bottom below the 100%, it's just the same as at the top. So you don't need to do actually any of these at the bottom. It's just a repeat of the information at the top. Okay, so you're comparing all of these 6 species to each other and seeing what percent of the amino acids in beta hemoglobin are identical. Right up above here, this is an important note. Something strange happens with this website. If you do happen to get this number 38.1, it's actually wrong. If you get 38.1 in one of these, you're actually going to put in 100. They are identical. They're 100% identical. Okay, 38.1 is actually 100%. So now I have 3 questions for you. Notice that the first question is actually based on that first chart. So based on the morphological chart only, identify what species do the whales share most of their traits with. Now we're taking a look at, for B, the biochemical evidence. So identify the species whose beta hemoglobin is most similar to the sperm whale. Here's the sperm whale. which number is the highest percentage? That's the one that is the most similar in terms of the beta hemoglobin. And then the question to answer, make sure you also give me an explanation when I do ask for that. Answer the questions in full. Okay, so now you have two tables. You have your sequences. You have 3 questions answered. Now you're just going to do the same thing for human evolution, comparing human, gorilla, chimpanzee, and rat beta hemoglobin. And for the rat, you'll notice here that it's HBB2 for that one, that you're going to copy the sequence for and do the comparison. And then 3 more questions that you're going to answer for me. Again, make sure you're reading them carefully and make sure that you are answering them in full. Okay, so once again, what I'm looking for 3 different tables. And again, you can just copy and paste them right into a Word document and fill in your answers right in the Word document. Here, I don't show you all the sequences, but you need to give me every single one of these sequences for all of the 8 different species. And you need to answer the 6 different questions for me.